from the Oprah show audience that Whitney did, I think it was her last show with us, and she had gone back on drugs. The first interview I did with her when we'd gone behind stage and I asked her about her attention, she was clean. But the day she came to my show then to perform in front of the audience, she was not.
17 years after Whitney Houston's heartbreaking decline shocked the world, a single comment from Oprah Winfrey has ignited a firestorm no one saw coming. During a recent appearance in France, Oprah claimed that Whitney allegedly appeared impaired during one of her final public appearances and even fell off stage, a moment Oprah says she kept hidden for years. But within hours, Whitney's longtime family representatives pushed back, insisting that version of events simply isn't true. And that's when the internet did something unexpected. Old clips of Wendy Williams confronting music executive Clive Davis suddenly resurfaced, reopening painful questions about Whitney's final years, the people closest to her, and who was really protecting her legacy. Social media is now divided. Was Oprah revealing a hidden truth, or reopening wounds that should have remained buried? And why are the same powerful names once again at the center of the Whitney Houston story?
And I knew that if that story got out that she'd fallen off the stage, that she would be destroyed by that. And so even though the audience was there and the audience had cameras, I begged them not to put those pictures out because it would ruin her life, and they didn't.
For years, Oprah Winfrey was seen as one of the few people Whitney Houston trusted enough to tell her story. Their emotional 2009 sit-down was marketed as a comeback moment, a chance for Whitney to reclaim her narrative after years of headlines, speculation, and personal struggles. At the time, millions watched as Whitney appeared vulnerable, reflective, and determined to move forward.
In many ways, the Whitney Houston that we have seen has been a creation of the media. That obviously your voice and your talent is what it is, but the gowns, the hair, that first video, all of that stuff was a creation. You were really somebody else.
I like to wear jeans and t-shirts and sneakers.
Yeah.
On any normal given day, that's me, you know what I'm saying? I love to get dressed up and I love to do makeup and hair and stuff.
Yeah.
But that was my performance, that was my entertainment, I remember.
And so then when you're expected to be that all the time?
It was too much.
Suddenly, what began as a personal story had evolved into something much bigger, a battle over memory, legacy, and who truly gets to define Whitney Houston's final years. And as the backlash intensified, many people found themselves returning to one familiar voice, Wendy Williams. Long before this latest controversy exploded online, Whitney Houston's struggles had already become one of the most heavily documented stories in entertainment history. For years, tabloids, television hosts, and industry insiders speculated about what was really happening behind the scenes. But despite endless headlines, very few people truly knew what Whitney was experiencing in private. By 2009, Whitney was attempting what many believed was impossible, a full-scale comeback. After years away from the spotlight, she returned with a new album, major interviews, and the support of some of the most powerful figures in the music business, including legendary executive Clive Davis. Publicly, the message was clear: Whitney Houston was back. Yet beneath the carefully managed comeback campaign, questions never fully disappeared.
Were you happy with him? Were you happy with the relationship?
I wasn't happy with the marriage.
You weren't happy with the marriage. Were you happy with yourself?
I was losing me into that.
Into the marriage?
Yeah, I trying to be pleasing.
Were you also trying to, because the world had said it wouldn't last 6 minutes, were you also trying to prove the world wrong?
I was determined. Determined to prove them wrong. So determined. And after a while, you start to lose what the real concept is of the love, and you want to make a statement.
Even years later, many fans continue to debate whether the people surrounding Whitney were truly protecting her or simply trying to preserve an image. Sources close to Whitney have often maintained that her personal battles were far more complicated than the public ever understood. Others argue that the intense media scrutiny itself became part of the tragedy. And this is precisely why Wendy Williams has suddenly become central to the conversation again. Long before social media existed, Wendy built her reputation by asking uncomfortable questions about celebrities, especially when powerful industry figures were involved. While many criticized her approach, supporters now claim that Wendy was often willing to challenge people others refused to confront. That tension reached its peak following Whitney Houston's death in 2012. While much of Hollywood was grieving, Wendy publicly questioned why Clive Davis chose to continue his annual pre-Grammy party only hours after Whitney had passed away.
For a whole year or two, it was every day.
Drugs?
Yeah.
Every day?
Yeah.
And you were using drugs to hide the pain?
Yeah, I wasn't happy by that point in time. I was losing myself. My mom came and got me twice.
At the time, the moment sparked outrage. More than a decade later, those same questions are resurfacing once again, and this time, they are being directed at Oprah herself. What happened next transformed a celebrity discussion into a full-blown public controversy. Almost immediately after Oprah's comments began circulating online, social media exploded. Clips from the Cannes Lions Festival spread across every major platform, and thousands of viewers started asking the same question: if Oprah truly believed this incident could have damaged Whitney Houston's life and reputation, why reveal it now? That question quickly became the center of the entire debate. Some fans argued that Oprah was simply sharing a deeply personal memory about one of the most important interviews of her career. Others, however, believed the timing felt strange. Critics questioned whether reopening painful chapters from Whitney's past was necessary, especially when Whitney is no longer here to share her own perspective. Then something unexpected happened. Old Wendy Williams clips suddenly began trending again. For years, Wendy had openly challenged some of the most powerful figures surrounding Whitney Houston. While many people disagreed with Wendy's style, supporters now claim that she consistently asked questions others refused to ask publicly. One clip, in particular, reignited intense debate. It was Wendy's famous confrontation with Clive Davis regarding the decision to continue the annual pre-Grammy celebration on the same day Whitney Houston passed away. At the time, Clive defended the decision, maintaining that Whitney loved the event and would have wanted it to continue.
I just thought it was in poor taste for you to continue with the pre-Grammy party when Whitney's body was still upstairs in the hotel room. Remember, Whitney passed away the same day as Clive, your annual party. Why did you go on and have the party? Just asking.
But years later, that explanation is once again being scrutinized. Online discussions are now filled with viewers revisiting old interviews, documentaries, and media appearances involving Oprah, Clive Davis, and other individuals who played significant roles in Whitney's career. Some social media users argue that powerful industry figures benefited from Whitney's image both during her lifetime and after her passing. Others strongly reject that claim, insisting that many of these people genuinely cared about her and supported her throughout difficult periods. And right in the middle of this debate sits another complicated relationship: Whitney's connection to Clive Davis. Throughout her career, Clive was often described as one of Whitney's biggest champions. He supported her professionally, helped guide several of her most successful projects, and remained involved during her comeback years. Even Whitney herself publicly acknowledged his support during some of her darkest moments.
You're a very small minority, because if you knew Whitney better, you knew she was not there to perform.
Yeah.
This was her favorite night of the year. She came out every year. This party was so part of her.
So you're saying that she
so
would
that the family, we spoke to representatives of Pat, who was a manager, Gary, who was her brother.
Her body was still upstairs.
But we dedicated.
Yet critics online now argue that this latest controversy has reopened old wounds surrounding Whitney's legacy and the people entrusted with protecting it. Pat Houston's response only intensified those conversations. According to reports, Pat firmly rejected Oprah's account and insisted that Whitney was not under the influence during the incident Oprah described. Instead, Pat reportedly maintained that Whitney simply lost her footing on an unfamiliar stage during rehearsals. That statement immediately divided public opinion. One side believes Oprah had no reason to invent such a story after all these years. The other side believes Pat, as a longtime family representative and steward of Whitney's estate, would have direct knowledge of the events and therefore deserves equal consideration. As accusations, counterclaims, and emotional reactions continue flooding social media, one thing has become impossible to ignore. 17 years later, the battle over Whitney Houston's legacy is far from over. And once again, the same powerful names remain at the center of the storm. Lost beneath all the headlines, the accusations, and the endless internet debates is one uncomfortable reality. Whitney Houston was not just a global superstar. She was a human being living under unimaginable pressure. For decades, Whitney carried a burden very few people could ever understand. To the public, she wasn't simply a singer. She was the voice. She was perfection. She was America's princess. Every appearance, every performance, every interview came with expectations that would have crushed most people. And according to Whitney herself, trying to live up to that image eventually became exhausting. The woman the world saw on magazine covers was often very different from the woman struggling behind closed doors. In past interviews, Whitney openly admitted that fame had taken away her privacy, her normal life, and eventually parts of her identity. The pressure to maintain a flawless public image reportedly became overwhelming. As years passed, that pressure only intensified. The media scrutinized her marriage. The tabloids chronicled her personal struggles. Every public appearance became front-page news. Every stumble became a headline. Every comeback attempt was treated as a test she either passed or failed. Perhaps that is why Oprah's recent comments have triggered such an emotional reaction. For many fans, this controversy is not simply about whether a particular incident happened exactly as described. It is about something much deeper. It is about whether Whitney's struggles should continue defining her legacy long after she is gone.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there was Clive, who said, I don't believe it's over. I said, no way. He said, God doesn't give you gifts like that and say it's over. He said, can't end like this, can't go like this. He said, plus I still got some more left in me. I thought, wow. He said, I'm going to give you a year.
Listening to Whitney speak years ago, many viewers saw someone desperately trying to reclaim control of her own story. Someone fighting to move forward despite immense personal pain. Someone searching for peace after years of public scrutiny. That is why some fans believe reopening these painful memories now feels deeply uncomfortable. Others argue that telling the full truth, even difficult truths, is essential to understanding Whitney's life. But perhaps the saddest part of this entire controversy is that Whitney Houston is no longer here to explain, clarify, or defend herself. And because of that, the battle over her memory continues to be fought by everyone else. Family members, friends, media personalities, industry executives, and millions of fans still trying to separate the headlines from the woman who lived through them. Whether Oprah intended it or not, her comments have now reignited one of the most painful debates in Whitney Houston's legacy: who gets to tell her story. For years, Oprah was viewed by many fans as one of the few media figures Whitney genuinely trusted. Their 2009 interview was considered a turning point, a moment when Whitney attempted to reclaim control of her narrative after years of public struggles and relentless headlines. But now, critics argue that Oprah's recent remarks risk overshadowing that very comeback. Almost overnight, social media turned into a battlefield. Some users defended Oprah, insisting that she was simply sharing a private memory and offering additional context to one of the most significant interviews of her career. Others strongly disagreed, arguing that revisiting alleged incidents involving addiction years after Whitney's passing only reopens old wounds for her family, friends, and loyal fans. The backlash has also had an unexpected consequence. Wendy Williams, absent from daytime television for years, is suddenly being celebrated online once again. Old clips of Wendy questioning powerful figures surrounding Whitney are going viral across multiple platforms, with many viewers claiming that Wendy was willing to ask difficult questions long before anyone else would. At the same time, the controversy has once again placed Clive Davis, Pat Houston, and other longtime figures connected to Whitney's life under renewed public scrutiny. Fairly or unfairly, their names have once again become part of a conversation many believed had finally come to an end. And through all of this, Whitney's own words continue to echo louder than ever.
She walked out of her 14-year marriage to R&B singer Bobby Brown.
I just knew I had to get to a point where I had to make a choice. And I just remember praying, if you give me one day of strength, I will go out that door and I will not look back. And that one day came, and I left. I remember I said, I'm going out for some sugar and some milk and I'll be back.
Did you know that that was the day?
I knew it.
You knew it.
I never came back.
Wow.
I never came back, and I went to LA.
Perhaps that is the greatest consequence of all. Because 17 years later, people are still arguing about Whitney Houston's struggles, still debating who protected her, and still trying to define her legacy. But the one person who can no longer speak for herself remains at the center of the storm. So, 17 years later, the questions refuse to disappear. Oprah has shared her version. Pat Houston has pushed back. Wendy Williams' old warnings are suddenly going viral again. And once more, the same powerful names are standing at the center of the Whitney Houston conversation. But perhaps the most haunting part of this entire story is that Whitney herself is no longer here to tell us what really happened. Was Oprah revealing a painful truth that had been hidden for years? Or has this controversy reopened wounds that should have remained buried forever? And if Wendy Williams was asking these questions years ago, why are so many people only listening now? One thing is certain, the battle over Whitney Houston's legacy is far from over. So what do you think? Is Oprah being unfairly criticized, or are fans right to question why this story surfaced now? Let me know in the comments below, because this story may be much bigger than anyone realizes.